You're watching The Ready Writer, a show where I get to speak to writers of all different genres, mediums, and experiences. The Ready Writer. Are you ready? Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Ready Writer. I am your host, Casey Bell, and today's guest we have Russell Little, who's here to discuss his book, Murder for Me. Let's get the show started. The first question that I asked Russell Little was, did he grow up wanting to be a writer?
Yes and no. It's one of those things where you feel it and you need it, but you don't really know it. I had an affinity toward books all my life, but I had multiple learning disabilities. So it was always assumed that I wouldn't be able to do things like that. But I do have a story for you. You'll like this story. So when I'm in the first grade, I told my teacher, Mrs. Latz, this story about my parents being in this bad car crash. And so after school, she called my mother in a panic. Are you okay? Are you okay? And then when she found out that I was just telling the story, she told them, don't be mad at him. He'll probably grow up to be a lawyer or an author. And I grew up to be both. So that's really, I've always been a storyteller, obviously. And I came from a real blue collar family. And I remember one Christmas, my parents, they always, what do you want for Christmas? My dad always bought all the toys that you could put on your list for Christmas. And all I wanted was books. And they were so confused. What? I didn't get books. So, but I also had a speaking impediment. When I was growing up, I had to go to a speech class. And one of the things the speech teacher told my mother was that I needed to read the newspaper every day to help me learn to read, and that would help me speak. And so from like the second and third grade, I was reading the newspaper. And that made me want to write because I loved the articles. I wanted to write my own articles. But I always had that struggle from the learning disabilities until, as you grow older, your brain works around those problems. Like a brain injury, your brain can work around those problems. That's true with learning disabilities too. So once I did that, I was fine. I was valedictorian of one of my universities. So I went from a C student in high school to an A student in college.
Russell Little next told me when he decided to publish his first book and why.
Okay, well, that's an interesting story too, Casey. I obviously now you see that I have a story for everything. It happened when I was 50 years old. I had written the same book 10 times already, but never finished. And when my youngest son was leaving for college, he said, Dad, you're running out of time. You better get finished. And so I finished my first book, and it was, shall I say, unsatisfactory. So I went ahead and wrote the second book. The second book is Murder for Me, which is the one that was reissued in last month, and its sequel comes out in October, but that was the one that I started and I finished because my boy said I was running out of time. He meant it with love, not otherwise, but it's still pretty funny because now I give him crap about it. You mean I'm running out of time for this too?
Russell Little shared with me what inspired him to write Murder for Me.
Okay, well, there's a few things about that. The first thing is during my whole life, I always looked for those special characters that weren't like everyone else. They were special. And every time I would come across one of them, I would try to be around them as much as possible just to soak in who they were. That's an inspiring part of the book. And in fact, the main characters in the book are groupings of some of these people throughout my career that I came across. Like the antagonist in this book is a grouping of the two psychopaths that I've known in my life. And there are several protagonists. There's a lawyer in the book, and everyone assumes that that's who I am in this book, which I hope not, because once you read what this lawyer's like, God help me if I'm like this guy. God help me. But and then there's another protagonist in the book that has some of me in it, but it's a lot more of one of those characters that I've come across in my life, who the real person that the characters fashioned out is an incredible conflict or paradox, because he's this hardcore dude. He's a Texas A&M alumni, and I don't know if you know anything about Aggie alumni, but there's whole stereotypes about them. And he can be all those things, and he's the best interior decorator you've ever met. I mean, the guy has unbelievable taste, and he's a know-it-all about everything, and just about everything he's actually pretty close to right about. And it was just too good of a character. This is a guy I had to write about, which completely embarrasses him all the time now.
So what is the
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish.
Well, so I have all these characters, right? And the situation of the books, I never came across this situation, but I came across parts of it or hints of it in cases over the last 40 years of practice. And it just came together.
Russell Little shared with me a little bit about the book.
Okay, Murder for Me, and here it is with the, I got to get back, with the newest cover. And I guess the synopsis is it's a clash between two people, one who is an incredible rule follower that is trying to enforce the law, and one who follows their own path and their own rules and is like a wolf among sheep. And it's a clash between them of a chess match, a physical chess match of who wins. And frankly, I didn't even realize I was doing that when I started writing it. It's like the characters, and I will bet that you're a writer too, Casey. And if you know this, characters after a while come alive and they take control. And there's two kinds of writers. They call them pants or planner. I'm a planner. I chart everything out from the beginning to the end. The trouble is, when a character comes alive in your own soul, it starts, I'm not doing this, I'm doing that. I'm not saying this, I'm saying that. I'm not going to backstab this guy, I'm going to trick this woman, that sort of thing. And it goes on, and until you have to, as a planner, you have to recharge as your characters start taking over. And the more they take over, the more the chart becomes theirs. Well, and that's kind of how the book took charge of itself. I even my wife, I woke up one morning during writing the first draft, and I told my wife, I said, oh my gosh, Marilyn came to me in my sleep. She said, who's Marilyn? I said, it's my main character. She said, I didn't think that was her name. I said, in my dream, she told me I had given her the wrong name. Her name was Marilyn. And my wife just kind of looked at me and said, you're creeping me out. As authors, we creep people out sometimes. That's part of our lives.
Yeah. Russell tells us about the initial publishing of his book, Murder for Me, and why he relaunched it.
Okay. I initially launched this book in 2016. And I independently published it. And I sold about 25,000 copies. I had the next book finished probably by the end of 2019. And, but I had several publishers wanting to publish the next book. And it was a struggle. It was business, as you can understand. The business of publishing, which is incredibly slow, incredibly picky. And for every 3 steps you take forward, sometimes you take 3.5 steps back. So it took time. And then when I wound up with Plum Creek Press, thank God, they said, okay, we want to, and they had the second book, which is Murder by Storm, which is coming out in October. It's the continuation of the struggle between these characters when the hurricane hits Houston, Texas. And the hurricane goes on for 7 days. As you know, Harvey went on for 7 days in Houston. They had 52 inches of rain. And that's when the second book takes place. And they wanted to have a new cover. So, because there'll be a third book, they wanted a new cover so all 3 books matched in their stables, right? So we had to relaunch it. And while in doing that re-editing, there was a chapter that was taken out. I don't know why, but it was put that they said, oh, this chapter is the most important chapter in the book, and you cut it out, you got to put it in. It's chapter 6. It's the first meeting when you see these 2 people are going to go at each other, because it's during their first meeting and interview, and that was cut out of the book the first time. Well, that's been put back in the book. I'm so humiliated. It's the most important chapter in the book. It sets the whole tone for the whole series, much less the book. And so that's why it had to be relaunched, right? With a new cover, with the new chapter. I have over 120 reviews. We launched it on Amazon, maintaining those 120 reviews. And that's very important. As you know, from an algorithm standpoint, it's crucial. So we relaunched it, but it was so it will match with the covers of the next 2 books, the one coming out in October and thereafter. And they're going to do, the press is going to do Audible books to go with it. So it all had to match.
The next question I asked Russell Little was, what did he learn about the publishing process that was news to him?
Thank you for asking that question. I'm rather passionate about that, and I appreciate that. The first one is the shock at how hard it is to publicize a book. There's millions of books out there, and you've got to find a way to get the attention of the people who are interested in your book. And it's really hard to do. You have to work at it every day. You have to become, frankly, an expert on things like algorithms. What are the magic algorithms? What makes the different sales companies on the internet pick your book and suggest it? And that is a crucial part. And all authors have to do it. It's shocking, no matter how big a person you are, how important you are, what publisher you have, how much your retainer was when they picked you. You have to work hard at publicizing your own book. And I was shocked at it. The second thing is the way Amazon works at selling books. That was shocking. I had to educate myself to it, and I had to adapt to it. And if you're going to sell books, you have to educate yourself on that. And what I'm saying is, it's like, who are your readers? You have to identify that, right? Then you have to figure out, now, how do I reach those readers on Amazon? What days do those readers buy books? I found that the people that buy my books buy their books Wednesday through Sunday. Those are the days that I need to be paying extra attention on Amazon because they buy my book. And most of the people that buy my book buy several books at a time. It's like they're buying the next several reads, right? So if my book's not the first one picked, I had to figure out, how do I get Amazon to say, oh, if you like that book, you might like Murder for Me too, right? And so that was a surprising thing. It's like a universe that you don't know exists until you see a glare or you look through a window and you see it. I didn't even know that universe exists. And then you stick your head out of the window and you see a complete universe that's well developed. It's going hard, and you never even knew it was going on. It was going on while you were living. Well, that's the way it is. So that was the second thing. And the third thing is, and I should have known this because juries make decisions in jury trials. I've done over 200 jury trials. Juries make decisions on the last thing that you would ever predict as a lawyer. I was always shocked. You know, after a jury comes to a verdict, it's announced, the judge releases everybody, everyone leaves, you get your client out of there before they say anything. That's kind of a rule. But then I would hang around because there's some jurors they don't want to talk. There's some they want to get home. But there's always one or two that want to maintain their fame for a few minutes more. And they want to talk to you. And so one of the keys is to find those people, to find out, why did you decide what you decided? And I'm almost always shocked, okay? But that becomes part of your jury plan as you become a more experienced lawyer. What are the unpredictable things a jury may find, and how do I give them an excuse to pick my side on that? That's a game that you play as a lawyer. Well, that's also a game when you're selling a book, is why do people pick your book? The people that do pick your book, why do they do it? And how do I suggest that to other people? And the surprise, after people read your book, at the things that they're either disturbed about or startled at or have to ask you questions. It's always stuff that I didn't expect. I probably can't tell you the final story of this story because it tells too much about Murder for Me. But let me say this. People can become more disturbed when animals are injured or killed than they can, no matter how many people you kill. It's shocking. And I got chewed out by my own family about some of my story. It was funny and shocking. I had a lawyer chew me out because of the way I treated lawyers in the book. Why would he care how I treat lawyers in the book? He was one of those older retired lawyers. I was shocked. So yeah, the responses of the readers to the things they were disturbed about shocked me, and it still shocks me. That's one of the things that I'll be most excited about Murder by Storm. I cannot wait to see what I have no idea is disturbing to some people, but is very disturbing and I get chewed out about. I can't wait. It's exciting.
Russell Little shares some advice for those aspiring to be an author.
Okay. Number one, it's clichéic, but I'm going to say it. Read. Read. It's like a family member asked me once why I read so much great literature, like Russian Dostoevsky. I'm like a Dostoevsky wacko. I'm a Proust wacko. Why do you read that stuff? My answer was because it makes you smarter. It's almost counterintuitive, but it is. It makes you smarter. Read. And the second thing is to stop saying you're going to write and start writing. Writing is a craft that has to be done all the time, every day, and you're not going to be good at it when you start. A few people are. Hemingway might have been good, but he wrote a lot of newspaper articles before he started his novel, so who knows? You have to work at it every day. So my second piece of advice is to start today writing and not talking about it. Well, I don't have a novel yet. Then write a story about what happened today. Or write a story about some old man that you saw walk down the street. Write a story about it. But start writing. And because writing a novel is a lot harder than you can imagine. Making a novel readable is harder. And then making it fun and exciting is even harder. And it takes time. And it takes re-edits. And you need to, if you will, dip your toe into the writing community. You need to, because there's a lot of interesting people out there. Most of the writers, and I include me in this, we're kind of weird people, but weird is better than normal because it's much more interesting. And you can get help and ideas. You can find people that'll read your stuff and tell you what's wrong with it, whether you like it or not. I have some of my best friends now are the people that after I turned 50 and I started finishing the book and decided to dip my toe into the writing community are now some of my very best friends. So you need to do that. And you need to not be afraid. If you want to write, if you've never been to a writer's conferences can be great and they can be terrible. I see you smiling. You have an interesting response. I'd love to see what your opinion on that is. Writing conferences can be a waste of time, and at the same time, they can do great things. I met my first publisher, my PR person. I met all these people during writers conferences, between sessions, right? Because you have coffee between sessions. You introduce yourself to people. You talk to people at tables. They introduce you to someone else. You go to the cocktail hour at night after the first day of the conference. You meet people. You can meet great people. So I would say you need to go to a writer's conference, even if it seems like a waste of time. Mm-hmm. And from your smile, I assume that you sometimes thought the same thing.
Well, I've never been to one, but I would say what I would say about going to a writing conference is the only way to know whether or not it's worth it is you got to go. Oh, even if I say I went to one and it wasn't worth it, doesn't mean it's not going to be worth it to whoever else is going. And so right. You'll either if you find out that it's not worth it, that's what you got out of it, and you got something. So it's definitely something if you haven't started writing yet, to go to one. And
don't Zoom, go in person. It's very important Because that's the only way you can meet people. You got to get out there, get your hands dirty, shake hands with people.
The last question I asked Russell Little was if he could have lunch in conversation with an author, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
It would probably be Dostoevsky. He was a crazy man. He was an incredibly brave and literate man. And he was from that Russian great literature history before the Bolshevik Revolution. So it was some of the greatest literary history and culture that has existed since the Greek city republics. So I think it would be Dostoevsky. Though the Russians always say Dostoevsky was an average writer, he just had a great interpreter. But you don't have to agree with them on everything.
Well, that is all the time we have for you today on The Ready Writer. I want to thank our guest, Russell Little, for stopping on by and sharing his author journey with us. And of course, you, the audience, thank you so much for stopping on by and watching. Hope to see you soon. Being that Russell Little is a diverse attorney, I decided to ask him off the subject question. I wanted to know if he can give us 3 vital lessons that he learned that he can share with anyone who's considering divorce.
Okay, well, number 1, my first piece of advice is stop talking to everybody. People, when they're trying to make that kind of decision, a lot of people, they're talking to everyone, getting their opinion. It gets confusing. Everyone has different. Stop talking and go interview at least 3 lawyers. Don't hire one lawyer. You go interview all 3 lawyers face to face, eyeball them. And look them in the eyes when you're talking to them and asking questions and think, is this someone that I can trust and do what they say, even if I don't want to? And if you haven't found them after 3 lawyers, then go see 3 more. But don't make a decision till you've seen at least 3. So that's the first piece of advice. Then my second piece of advice is once you define that person, that lawyer that's going to help you through the process, do what they tell you, period. Okay? Some of the biggest expenses my clients over the years have had, some of the biggest problems my clients over the years have had is because they decided to not do what I told them. And it got them in trouble. Perfect example. Getting your client ready to be a witness at trial or for a deposition. You spend a whole half a day or a whole day with them, getting them ready. And one of the first things I tell my clients is, look, your spouse's attorney, you may not think he's very smart. He may not be very smart. But he's been doing this for 20 years or 10 years or 30 years over and over and over. Do not assume that on your first attempt, you can overcome your opponent when you're testifying. Just do what I tell you. Okay? So that's very important. The third, have I said 2? That might have, yes, that's 2. Yeah. The third thing is, stop trusting what people will tell you, except for your lawyer. Because during a divorce, especially a contested divorce, you hear a lot of things. People tell you a lot of things, even if you're not talking. And you trust the promises. And the key is you don't trust. You except for yourself and your attorney. And in fact, that's a little harsh, even as I say it, because I always ask my clients, I always give them one person, because you can't call your lawyer every time you need to talk, because they would charge you way too much money, right? So I always give my clients one person that is close enough to them and faithful enough to them that they can talk to, right? And then I always tell them, except for that person, don't trust and don't talk. But that is true. I do let them have at least one person, because you have to be able to have someone to talk to, except your lawyer, because you can hear the time clock click, click, click every time you call.